Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Drums podcast. This is episode 2. I'm excited for this one. I've been looking forward to this all week. How are you guys?
Good. Coffee, wink, wink.
I have also been looking forward to this all week. This is really a highlight of my weekend to be talking with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing good on week, whatever everything is going on, but I hope you're getting a lot of drumming in and a lot of work done. I don't know, man. I love this quarantine stuff. It's great.
It's an excuse to get work done.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I've been really productive with things. Just practice or getting things tracked out for some recording, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. Like having the sort of like time to just go really into stuff. So yeah, I'm feeling. We
got 4 inches of snow today too, so I was like, this is like the perfect like weather. I don't know, it felt like snowed in, but I don't know, it was very cozy today.
Perfect excuse.
Very excited to talk.
Absolutely.
Oh, right then. So yeah, I guess section 1. I'm not going to call it that in every podcast, but
section 1.
We need sort of like one of the big cinematic openings, like section 1. I need to learn to do a really epic voice. But yeah, what have you guys been practicing? I've got something like I had a really insane drum lesson this week that I want to talk about.
Let's hear about it.
Cool, yeah. So my drum teacher is Craig Blundell, who, plays for Steve Hackett and Steven Wilson, the big prog guys. And I've been going to him for lessons now for going on nearly 7 years. And I don't get that many lessons because, he's big, he's touring, he's always busy. But when I do, it's sort of like a 3 to 4 hour absolute mind-melting session of just, not necessarily me practicing the same thing. He'll throw something out, he'll give me the notation, we'll work through it until I've got it to understand the exercise, and then bam, on to the next one. Because it's all stuff that'll be sort of like 6 months worth of practice, which I absolutely love. But yeah, we were working on burying the metronome, like absolutely, whilst playing, well, basically cross-coordinated patterns with your limbs. So trying to make sure that whatever I'm doing with either limb, I constantly feel in control, so I'm not slipping out of time. And oh boy, I have to say, it was, like I say, mind-melting. So we were just playing simple things, sort of, singles, quarter notes, 8 notes, triplets, but then on the feet, I was playing sort of like offset dotted note rhythms with the hi-hat and bass drum. So I had to keep that going whilst switching, but then I had to do sort of like triplets from hand to hand singles, then triplets in doubles, then triplets with one hand, then triplets with the other hand, and then repeating the exercise. And every time it just stepped up a level where the foot part would get more complicated. And like I say, it absolutely melted my mind. I've been really hammering it since the lesson.
Is it helping your timing at all?
I've
getting
actually,
a handle on it?
When I was streaming and doing a bit of recording, like practicing some stuff for recording, I felt already I was just sitting on the click. I wasn't, where before I was sort of like listening to myself on the click, which threw me out, where now I'm feeling that just stay there, not overthink it, just sit in it, sit within it, let it embrace you,
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like with the metronome, at least in the past, like for me when I first started, it was when like live bands really started using like click tracks or playing to a metronome, where in like most of the bands that I played in the past, were like punk bands, like rock bands, cover bands. When I started doing like professional gigs or playing with like metal people, like really intricate stuff, where if I was going like 4 or 5 BPMs a little faster, I would be fine. But let's say the guitar player is playing like right at the cusp of what they're capable of, you know, with like yeah, like they just turn around and want to like throw a brick at me if I'm just creeping up a little bit. And I remember the first time someone said like, dude, just play the show to a metronome, you know, here's all the tracks. And I was like, what? No, I'm not doing that. I don't need that. I'm perfect. Like my timing. And I just said that because I couldn't do it. I was like, man, I can't play a show. Like I got to hear, you know, how am I going to do that? And then it was just constantly being in it. And like you said, bury yourself in the click where you just don't hear it anymore. It just becomes like an auxiliary percussion player. But if you can start pulling off stuff that you're uncomfortable with a metronome, or that like makes you feel weird or just really pushes you, man, you go back and play a straight groove, you don't even know it's there, you know, or a fill comes up. And it's so beneficial to practice like that. Just in so many circumstances now, I can't tell you the last like real gig that I've done without a backing track with a click track, or I had to play to a click. Just everyone wants it now. No matter how good your timing is, you're going to have to do it at some point, you know? Yeah, so that's really cool.
It was interesting because, like I say, I sort of like, I class myself as a solid enough drummer. And when I'm playing on stage, I've had clicks in my ears and I've been fine. You know, thankfully I started sort of like playing with a click quite early on. I used to play for a wind band, and even though we had the conductor at the front leading everyone, I still had a click which he was setting up front, and I just had a headphone out, and so I'm used to hearing music and the click. Excuse me. But when it comes to actually practicing or recording, it was there, and I've been scared of it. You know, I've been scared of going off time, but it's now I'm starting to get it where I am. And like say, even just like a week's worth of practice, it's disappearing. I'm not hearing it, which for me is like, I'm actually sitting on it, which is, you know, I'm getting a bit excited about it. The simplest thing in drumming, being in time, I'm getting excited about. But yeah, I'm loving it.
It's really a interesting mentality behind it. I think for me, it's like, you know, when I listen to a metronome, and I don't know if you guys have this sort of mentality behind it, but it almost becomes like when you're, you know, burying it or playing along with it, it's almost like you're not even listening to it anymore. It is like you trust your own inner clock enough to be able to play alongside it instead of to it. And it's almost like it becomes like this out of body like rhythm experience where you are just able to have that, you know, when you trust your inner clock enough, you're able to just have that intuition to really nail it. And I think that's what a lot of drummers have. It's definitely a developed skill. It was not natural for me, and I don't think it's natural for a lot of people, but it's when you really start to play it over time and you really start to develop it, that's kind of what it becomes to me. Like when I'm practiced and everything is, you know, coming together, that's what it feels like.
I have a question for you guys. Like when you first started using a metronome, did you do it with drum set playing, or did you do it with like hand stuff, like on a pad or like a snare drum, like in band? Because I started with just hand stuff like in college, and I was like, you don't need a metronome on the drum set. That's silly. And then I was just like, the brakes were put on, and I was like, oh my God, what? I kept those two separate, you know?
Yeah. I played piano before drums, and I played cornet before that, and the metronome for me came in with the piano. So I had, like, my teacher made me practice along to a metronome. So when I came to start learning with my drum teacher and he didn't have a metronome, I found it kind of weird. So at first I was putting on the metronome at home, and then he was like, no, just learn the parts and then we'll play it to a metronome. And I sort of like slipped out of that. It was his style of teaching, because, you know, he teaching in schools, etc. We didn't have that long, so he wanted to get me through sort of the beat so I could go back and do it at home. And I sort of slipped out using the metronome to practice, but it was more on the pad rather than the drum set.
Yeah.
For me, my first experience with a metronome was my first drum teacher, who was a local a drum corps snare drummer, super machine, super precise, and it was all about developing that rhythm. And I was studying with him for about a year, and so it was all about everything that you're practicing is relative to a very precise time. Then I switched to a different drum teacher who played everything by ear, and his style of teaching was, you're going to learn songs. So you pick a song you want to learn, and then we're going to learn it. And so my metronome for a long time was Neil Peart when I was trying to learn Free Will or Tom Sawyer or all that kind of thing. Was I practicing it to a metronome? No, but in order to get those ideas to develop, you have to, or to actually pronounce those ideas on a drum set, they have to be in time. Otherwise, it's going to sound like mush. So it kind of was, while it wasn't to a metronome, it was,
it was. It was.
Indirectly. And then after I stopped studying with him, like I haven't studied like with anybody officially from there. It's all been by ear. So then there was a period of like 6 years where I was just kind of playing in the school band or whatever. And then about 2009, I wanted to record my first YouTube video. And I remember I was like,
snap.
yes,
oh boy,
it's about to go down. So
create account.
Yep. So I'm in my mom's basement, and it's like, I play along. It was like an Owl City song. It was like way back MySpace days. And so
Amazing.
I listened. Yeah. And I listened back, and it sounded so atrocious, so wildly different than what I was hearing. It was like, in my head, I was nailing it. I was like, I'm ready to go. Like,
Flewp, aka Cobus,
That's exactly what I was watching. I was like, and so I was ready to, I was listening back, and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, I am off. Like, everything sounds so muddy. And then from that point on, I started practicing and understanding the importance of a metronome. It really, like, oh my goodness. And then, take a lot more seriously after that point.
I have a fun little question. So, what's your metronome sound? Do you go for the cowbell, the actual click, or do you go for the annoying little lady who's like, 1, 2, 3, 4?
Oh, I've heard that on Flewp's channel.
That's that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. She can count real fast. She's on it. Absolutely. I go for two different ones. I go for the lady sometimes because she actually says the numbers, and I think that's really important sometimes when I'm really trying to develop ideas that are in odd time signatures. But when I'm trying to really dig into like pocket grooves and really trying to bury a groove, I want to have a buriable sound, which is really short and precise. So I'll go for not even like an instrument. It just is like a little tick, which is like, if I'm on it, I won't even be able to hear it. And I like that too. So combination.
Yeah. Logic has this cool thing. I have a Tama rhythm watch from like the early 2000s. So whatever stock one, that's what I use on the pad, just whatever that gives you. But Logic is really cool because you can pick like a note, you can pick the tone and like the velocity of that. So if it's a song that's really where I'll match it to the song depending on like the key or like a certain vibe. But I hate the cowbell sound like so much. That's like the old Pro Tools, you go do sessions, you just like, and I'm just like, oh, it just like it hits, like I hear it in like the middle of my forehead, like it just pierces through everything. And I just remember hearing like drum tracks, and you can hear that click through the overheads, with the headphones, and I hate that sound. So if that disappeared, I'd be totally fine. But I definitely like a very like a subtle white noise kind of click, and then I'll usually pitch it to the song or project, so it's not like really sticking out. unless it's something that I have to record that is just recorded so bad, like the scratch tracks are just like the guy did them, like we're gonna re-record this anyway, so they're just like blowing their nose and coughing through the whole thing.
Oh boy.
You know, then I don't mind. But if I'm really trying to get a good vibe, I try to match it to kind of the song I'm recording.
Yeah, I've been playing along with for my practice, I've actually been playing with, on my electronic kit, the TD50, I've just set everything to cowbells. So when I'm playing along to the cowbell click, your nightmare, Dan.
That's a nightmare.
Have you heard my cowbell? You need to come into my stream, I'll show you the cowbell kit. You'll probably run away screaming. When I'm playing, if I'm burying the kit, if I'm burying the metronome, then I don't hear it because, it's just the same sound. But if I'm flamming, I really hear it. It just allows me to really cut through, my own perception, I'd say, of whether I'm on time or not. And right now, because I'm really trying to nail it for getting better at recording, etc. As much as I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of cowbells anyway, actually, to play them. I can't groove with them very well. You're amazing at whacking them in there, Flewp, with just, keeping it when I see you playing. But for me, they stick out like a sore thumb. So usually I'm more on your way of thinking, Dan. But for that exercise, it's perfect. But yeah, I also use the little lady counting for the same reason as you said. And that was really interesting. The fact
is it
that
a
you
lady
say,
or is it like a really annoying dude?
That's up for you to decide. Roland leaves it up to you.
I always heard him as like a terrible like boss that's like 1, 2, 3 faster go. I'm like,
that would be a good exercise. Have all of the Roland users just draw a picture of what they think the metronome person sounds like.
Oh my,
a lot of fun.
Right, okay. We need to make a Twitter account for this for this podcast or something. And anybody who's listening to this, if you are a Roland electronic user, of Roland V-Drums user, we want you to draw a picture of who you think that lady /man /alien /thing is.
That's a good one. I like that. That's cool though, man. I'm excited, like, if how you feel in a couple weeks after doing that stuff, because like it'll probably catch on really quick. You'll get comfortable. The first couple times doing something weird like that just feels so out of place. And then you start to go like, oh, I know I'm getting control over stuff. And then you can really fine tune it. And so that's exciting.
I have pretty good limb independence as it is, but this is sort of taking it to the point where I don't know. My limb independence is more I set that limb doing its thing, and then I think about the other stuff. So that hand is on like just I've looped it, or the foot, etc. But now it's being able to sort of like not do that, be aware of everything that's going on whilst making sure I'm nailing the time. So
what are you working on, Flewp?
Well, after last week and saying that I'm in maintenance mode, I thought I couldn't show up to this week saying I was still in maintenance mode. You have inspired me to actually make progress on things. Yes. So the first thing I did actually this week was I was like, you know what? I haven't had a session where I have actually truly sat down and focused on my playing in a long time. So I put the metronome to 80 beats per minute. Yes. I was like, paradiddle time, 80 beats per minute.
Let's go.
Oh my goodness. That was like nails on a chalkboard. It was like,
well, what did you practice with paradiddles? Like, how'd you do it?
You know what? Straight paradiddles. Just straight. Just right,
on
left,
the kit
right,
or the pad?
Just a snare drum. Yeah, just a kit. Yeah. I was on my my electronic kit, and it was just, you know what? We are going back to square one. It was almost, I just wanted to, I was curious. It's like one of those things, like, of course, we know what a paradiddle is at 80 beats per minute, but just what it sounded like. Reverb off, nothing. Like, no lady, like, just like, this is all pocket, most unforgiving scenario ever. And it is like shining a black light on your playing, where it's just like, you know what? If you're playing along to music or whatever, there are so many things you can do to kind of scuff like your time, like to get away with things. But man, when you're sitting there,
I meant to throw that note off. It's feel, man. What are you talking?
Yeah, exactly. And so, but man, when there's just no BS, it's just you and that click. Oh my goodness, it was just a wake up call, you know, because you can develop all these things and then you lose them too when you don't practice. So,
well, if you don't mind me asking, like, what was really sticking out to you that you didn't like? Like,
absolutely, there were two things. One thing is that my 16th notes weren't super consistent in between playing the para and the diddle. So the diddles kind of swung, and the paras were fine. The diddles were okay. The diddles were kind of swung, so it sounded uneven. The second problem is that when I lead with my left hand, my timing isn't as good. So whenever I started my left paradiddle, it would come in just so slightly off from the click. So, I start that right, left, right, I'm there. It's like, boom, everything's going great, but up, that left on the downbeat, all of a sudden it's just like, ooh, whoa, what was that? Like, but when you're really listening to it, those are the little details that come out of the woodwork that it's just kind of like, man, really, I'm not used to like being in that mindset. I'm used to like, oh, a song comes on, we play to it, and, you can kind of dial it in well enough because we've played drums for long enough. But man, when all the safety nets are gone, did you get a hold on it like throughout the week, or
absolutely did it get better? Yeah.
Once you even 10 minutes worth of like 10 minutes is forever. Like, if you guys have not, anybody that's listening, if you've never done this before and you are sitting down to a metronome, I just challenge you to do it for 5 minutes, because it is going to feel like an hour of just listening to it. But man, it's like the muscle memory. It's going to come back. It's going to improve. And especially, and I can't stress this enough, if you practice it and then you put the sticks down and then you come back to it after a good night's sleep, that's where I find most of the improvement. Like, you really can't, as far as me personally, I can't improve so much in one session as I can over a handful of sessions where they are dedicated and you're staying healthy in between and everything is going well. Like,
that's something about learning in general. For myself, I'm a big learner. I actually research and have done throughout my life on how to learn something properly, because as Jojo Mayer, one of the best quotes ever is, practice for results, not hours. That there are so many people who are like, oh, I've got 10,000 hours of playing a whatever, and or doing a skill, and you'll look at it and they won't be, say, as good as the person who's done 2,000 hours, and they get really angry over it. But then you deep dive into how they've been learning or how they've been practicing, and you'll find out that they've just been sat there. There's no self-reflection. There's no, like you said, doing that 10 minutes of just listening to it, but then coming back the next day. It's like gymnasts. If they can't pull off a trick, they will compartmentalize, imagine them doing it, take a break for a couple of hours, come back. But that mental visualization, that understanding, just absorbing what you've just done, and like you say, having that night's sleep, your brain is processing that and building those neurons that is needed to go back and nail it next time.
Drummers don't have brains though.
That's, what, that is the ultimate caveat to all of this. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And then just a small aside for other things. I'm not affiliated with Orlando Drummer at all, but I downloaded a couple loops from OrlandoDrummer.com, and
he's a good dude.
Yeah, I would love to meet him one day, but just made an account, just have been kind of half looking at his website for a long time, but I finally made an account and I downloaded a couple loops, and really helps as far as creates a really nice landscape for you to explore different ideas from what you're working on. Especially, go ahead. What's up?
I was just gonna say I have the same thing. I love playing and messing around to a loop because it's there.
Yeah.
It's filling that that silence for you to, like you say, and it's not a song. there's no set format for it. You can just go ham. Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say I
Absolutely.
love
And so it was my first time. Usually when I'm looking for a song to play to, I'm looking through like Spotify and saying, oh, what kind of song do I want to play? A John Mayer song or Christina Aguilera song or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But this had a different kind of vibe to it because it literally is just a loop. And so you can really use it as a foundation to nail down ideas, because the song loops, you can try the idea over and over and over again. It's not like, oh, I'm in the verse now, I got to wait until the next chorus before I try to, fit this idea in. You can really explore ideas in a more structured way. So
I think you meant to say Meshuggah, right? Like,
The only thing that matters is how fast you can do Hirtas on the bass drum. Exactly.
Yeah. That's it. That's drumming. That you've peaked. If you can do that, you.
Yeah.
Right then. So, I think it's time to move on to the next section. So, we've got a couple of videos. I think a good way going forward is, we didn't have time for my video last week, so I have that one ready to go. But I think if we keep it to 2 videos, and one of us misses out each week, sort of thing, it gives a good talking point as well.
Really quick, I wanted to say what I was doing really quick.
Oh, sorry, Dad.
No, it's okay, because this is really important. I think you guys would dig this. I played on this years ago when it was a prototype at NAMM, and I remember it forever just in the back of my head, and I was like, I don't need that. Whatever. It's silly. I finally got one of these this week. Have you ever seen this?
The Moon Gel.
It's a
pad.
Moon Gel workout pad. For those of you who, I've got Real Feels, I've got all kinds of different practice pads here. And for especially the session that I did this week, that was really groove oriented and really kind of just, the drums were really detuned. The snare wasn't tight. It was very just like let the snares just like kind of melt every time you hit. Yeah. This practice wise, and like Flewp mentioned, like playing paradiddles, you literally do everything on this. There's no rebound. I think everyone should kind of check it out. I've been working on like stick control stuff, for the last like month and a half. That's kind of been a big focus. And when this came this week, I have a template that I tempo mapped in Logic that starts at like 80 and goes all the way to 160. It does 20 bars each, and it I'll just sit down and I can run through all the exercises. And man, I've been doing it consistently, and I don't really get pain anymore from like doing warm-ups and stuff like in my forearms. That hurt. Like my arms are getting like an insane workout. I wouldn't recommend just that's all you use, but if you're looking at something to kind of beef up what you already have going on and just reinforce certain things and just make yourself work a little harder without having to get like a heavier stick or use marching sticks or those stick weights, everyone tries to do that stuff. I don't know. I don't know. It's not very expensive, but the fellow who made them recently passed away. So that's what got me thinking like, I need to get one of these. Like he was a sweet dude. He made the Moon Gels and all this stuff, and it was his idea. Yeah. And it's neat because when you use it and when you're all done, like this pops out and you can flip it around. So like you can use it forever. It's very, very cool. So it's called the Moon Gel workout pad. And oh my gosh,
I might have to pick one of those up. It's big
very
on my
invigorating.
I have about 12 different practice pads as well. Mm-hmm. I love the ones with the different sections, or like you say, the Real Feels. So I'm gonna have to pick one of those up, add it to my collection. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's awesome. But
I love it, man.
But yeah, so videos, like you say, as I said, we'll probably do 2 videos, and we'll rotate round for future podcasts, sort of thing. So then it also gives the person who's got you've got a week off to find something really cool for a video. So today we've got one from Dan and one from myself. So shall I go first?
Yeah,
Would you like to?
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to play this. I'm going to share it for you guys and play it. But quick intro to it. So this is from Benny Greb's groovy solo from the language of drumming, and I have to say it's my all-time favorite drum solo. There's Moby Dick and there's all the Buddy Rich stuff, and and the Mule by Deep Purple, but this one just speaks to me as a solo because it's, for me, a piece of music rather than it just being how many chops can you fit into 5 minutes sort of thing, which sometimes a lot of solos, and I know myself when I perform a solo, I end up doing that, but I aspire to be able to solo to create music. So yeah, here it is. I'll show it to you guys. Oh, that didn't work. the joys of Discord. That one, please. There we go. Here we go.
He's got hair.
Whoa, this old video.
I know. It's old Benny.
Baby Benny.
Right, okay, so the part I want to show, it's just this when he kicks in with his ostinato, so yeah. Either way, that's enough to be able to talk about what I want to talk about with it. Is there is throughout that so much musicality in what he's playing whilst keeping that foot ostinato going, and he's swapping between the hi-hat pedal and his slave pedal for the double bass, and it's solid. It never falters. It never changes. And I've tried learning to play that solo, and I can play a bit of it, but it's so unbelievably hard. He starts doing triplets with one hand, from the high tom to the floor tom to then his stacker, and he just keeps that looping whilst keeping his snare pulse going. And I tell you what, it's just phenomenal. I can't get over it. I love it so much. I'm sure you guys know that solo. I think anybody who's a Benny fan knows it.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's just like the drummer's drummer, or I guess everyone's drummer's drummer. He's got something for just grooving or the tech side of stuff or the sounds. Like he's super musical when he plays, all his, I'm trying to think, what is it called where he just sings all the parts? He's got like 2 albums. I can't really listen to him. Yeah, I can't. Yes. I can listen to it in moderation, but
when he's doing the mouth drum.
yeah. I was like, yeah, my kids just did that in the kitchen. I'm good. It's interesting though, and it's very musical. He's got a very musical approach to his playing for sure.
Yeah,
I think that transcends the drums. He just knows a lot about music.
Yeah.
I think one of the really cool things is, there's a lot of musicality to it, and I think the whole entire solo, especially the ostinato on his feet, I think it's extremely intelligent in what he's doing for more than just the way it sounds. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what he's doing with his feet is he's doing just 16 notes, but the left foot is switching in between the hi-hat. And so he's taking a concept that I think most drummers are really familiar with, which is straight 16 notes. And then you take it into I think it would have to be left-hand lead or like a left foot lead, because the hi-hat is going like
on the downbeat.
On the downbeat. But at the same time, like he's taking a concept that like rhythmically is fairly straightforward. Like coordination wise, incredibly difficult, but he keeps it grounded through that. So no matter what kind of crazy things he's doing with his hands, you always have that pulse. And there's a very, it's like there was a Neil Peart solo a long time ago where he was just, it was like Der Trommler, I think. I know I'm not pronouncing it totally correct, but it was just like a basic 3-note pattern with his feet, which his hands were able to solo over. And like the rhythmic concept for his feet are really simple, but it provides not only like incredible musicality, but it makes the whole entire solo kind of like musically relatable. Like it makes it so much easier to listen to because you have that foundation. There's a lot of drum solos that because I don't have the foundation, there's ideas that don't kind of they don't come through as well because the phrasing in your head is all like for the drummer's head is all figured out, but it's impossible to communicate that in a way that is relatable to the listener. And that the simplicity and the elegance of what he's doing with his feet, simplicity rhythmic wise, technical like incredibly difficult, but like as far as that, it really grounds it.
Like you say, it's like a song. If you listen to a song without drums and it's just guitar, and even remove the bass, so you haven't got a rhythmic element, and you've got, say, guitar solo, there's nothing for your ear to come back to. Like you say, and that ostinato that's going, that's why I really admire it, is because no matter what goes on, what ideas he throws out, he's then got the foot part to just seal it together, but also then to play off. So it informs the next thing he's playing. Obviously, this is practiced for the DVD, but obviously when he's come up with it, that's what's brought those ideas out. And whenever I play a solo now, I try and keep some form of ostinato on the feet going, because it allows me to, you can have a bit of respite as well from physically playing during a solo, because with the hands, because the feet's there, and you can let that speak for a while before coming in with some other little secret sauce or garnish over the top with the hands.
I like he has like a hook within his solo too. Like you can hear it with the toms. He's got like that little like a repeating melody over top of that already ostinato foundation. It just, you're on like a journey with him as he's getting to the next part of the solo. It's cool than just some guy going chops. Like exercise 1, exercise 2, here's it backwards, here's it forwards. Like there's a very catchy, relatable thing happening within that. So it just humanizes it and makes it musical rather than robotic. So very, very, very cool. Very
excellent
cool
video.
Yeah. Right then. So Dan, you've got something from Steve Jordan. While I throw this up for you guys, do you want to tell us what you love about it?
Yeah. Like I said, this week, Steve is probably my all-time favorite drummer. When people ask that, we always go, but like deep down, like if I can get a hint of what he's got going on, like that's what I'm aspiring for, is this dude in this clip. It's the great Steve Jordan. If you don't know who he is, like look him up, Google him. He's been around for a long time. He's like the cat. It's just him going to the Memphis drum shop. They set up a kick and a snare and a hi-hat, and just was letting him try out some different snares. So it's literally with the camera microphone. There's nothing professional. There's no 20 mics set up or in his perfectly acoustic. The drums probably he may or may, it doesn't show him tuning it, but I'm pretty sure he just sat down. He's one of those guys that could just sit down, play a groove, and you can just go, I could listen to this all day long. And it's just it's the simplest thing you're ever going to hear. But I guarantee if any of us tried to sit in that same room and sound like him, we would all fail.
I'm excited.
Like it's just it's and you'll hear like when the camera moves around him, you can hear like the tones change, because bass traps and all that in the room. Like so it's just like a crappy camera microphone, but in the way it's compressing it. But he's so consistent with his hits. It's stupid. It's inspiration for me, So
right then, roll the clip. Oh, that's so good.
Like, I've been in a very small room with him playing before, and right after that, you know, these monster other drummers go up and play, and it's just like something about that dude. And if you just watch him play, it's just flicks. He's not even like moving. It's just, it's just so good.
He's got his backpack on. You know, he's just walked into, you know, the mentality. He literally has just walked into a music store, you know, just sat down and played. I loved, like you said, I'm glad you pointed it out with the sound changing, because I would have just focused on the playing, but that was beautiful. And
just the way he hits the snare and the hi-hat is just consistent, you know. The kick drum, he's not overplaying it. He's just he basically like just volume checked everything and just made it just easy to listen to in that room, you know, where, you know, I would have been probably a little heavy on the kick or a little heavy on the hi-hat, and people would be like, like some drummers in there playing. 99% of the people that would go sit at that kit, we would probably want to leave the room and shut the door, right? But he sits down and it sounds just like, I don't know. Goals. I'll just put it that way.
I think that like one of the things that you touched on, Dan, that's really important is that the fact that he's not overplaying anything and everything is very deliberate. And I think a lot of times, and I do this all the time, I use extra notes as a crutch for timing. Where
totally.
you know, playing complicated grooves a lot of times is easier than playing simple grooves because you have so many arms moving at once. It's really hard to get out of sync. But the space and how deliberate he puts that space into the groove is such a statement to his musicality. And it's like I was getting scared just watching it. Like I know it's like a like a simple groove, but to play even a simple groove for that long, I mean, drummers just assume that like, oh, that's something you learn on day one. But the longer you play drums and the more you learn to appreciate like what's going on, people don't ever really hammer stuff down like that. And especially don't make it sound that good on a camera microphone. There's a lot of nuances of what's happening there. And the fact that he keeps it so solid, I mean, that just says a lot. That's not easy to do.
Yeah. Well, like if you go back and listen, just like listen to the timing.
You could put a click to that, you know.
It's like better than a click. He makes the click scared, you know. It's crazy.
It's interesting what you said about like the day one stuff, because when you sit down at the kit, you know, you've got the the 8 notes on the hi-hat, the kick and snare on 1 and 3. There you go. You get it down. You're like, I can play this. What's next? You know, let's throw in a fill. But and I've done it before, and some of the stuff I'm actually recording. I'm going to be like finishing off next week. I've got to sit just with a groove, no fills, no blemishes or, you know, enhancements or anything. Just sit on what the track needs. It's some lo-fi hip hop stream beat stuff, and like it's hard. It's really hard to keep that for 5 minutes because my drummer ADD is going all over the place. Like, I could put in some triplets here, or let's have the hi-hat rise, or oh my god, fill time, you know, and I can't do that. And like you say, just actually sitting there and being able to hammer that out is a lot of drummers don't appreciate. When you're a younger drummer, like you say, I mean, one of the first things you ever said to me, Dan, when we chatted for the first time was, when did you get over going fast? And it's, you know, that's sort of like this video really hammers that home of he doesn't need to be flashy because his groove and feel and just, like you say, that intelligence of sitting in the room and playing just the right volume just speaks.
Another thing like that I challenge everyone to do, if you drum or you got a drum set in your room and you have a phone or whatever, if you have a recording software or whatever, play just a beat like that, just set it down, and like you said, you know, 5 minutes. And it's very easy when you hit record, you know, go back to the beginning and listen to it, and then quick skip to the end, and you're gonna hear this like whoosh, either you got louder towards the end or you got quieter, or it's not necessarily your timing may have shifted, but how you're playing has vastly changed in that 5 minutes, right? Maybe you had to fart in the beginning, or you had like, you know, you got spooked, or something caught your eye, and that really affects everything. But he's so stable in recordings, and that's one of the reasons I was really just watching stuff like that this week, just to get grounded, be like, look, when I start the song and this is the vibe, it needs to end with this vibe at that same pace, because I'm not changing my emotions. That's for the rest of the song to do, you know. And he can just sit excuse me, he's like the master at that. It's so inspirational just to, like I said, to be in a room or to watch or to listen to a track that he's on, because you just appreciate that. You know, it's very hard to find nowadays. Even the best drummers in the world can't do it, you know, like he can. It's an art. It's a touch and a feel. But it's just goals.
Yeah, it's an incredibly mature approach to playing drums, because a lot of people, they look at that groove and it's just like, oh, I can play that, but that's just one step closer to being Travis Barker or something like that.
That was me, man. That was me. That's easy. What?
We all have that phase. I think there's definitely something to be said for just musicians in general. Everyone has an ego phase of playing their musical instrument, and it's not a bad thing. Like, genuinely, you need to go through having some confidence in what you do, but also everyone will have that point where you'll get torn down. Like you said, you know, you could go and sit in a room and flash all the chops, and then he'll come in, sit down, and you'll be like, and I'm putting these sticks away now, you know. Yeah. But it's that sort of like ability to learn, to grow as a musician by, like you say, just going back to the absolute basics is
and people aren't ready for that and day fun. One. Yeah.
Oh no.
Like your ears have to hear it. You have to hear it in the music, and you don't get to that stage until you're way comfortable behind the kit. You know, it's not something I suggest people start working on from day one. You know, just walk first. Try to get from here to the mailbox without hitting a tree or falling in a bank. You know, that's like the first goal. But, you know, stuff like that, that's what, you know, especially listeners or people who've been playing a long time, that's stuff that if you are taking a professional approach to it, you should really start putting some time towards, you know.
Well, next video is going to be Steve Jordan walking into the drum vault at Memphis Drum Shop and playing Bleed by Meshuggah, right? That's what's going to
probably like a boss. He could probably just do it, right?
So that does it with 1 foot.
Like, these kids. These kids.
Well, right then. So, next and final section for the podcast. I tell you what, we were chatting about this and we had to stop ourselves again. We're going to do this every single podcast. We're going to be like, just as soon as we open up the call,
start recording.
Just start recording. So yes, cymbals. And I have to say, for me personally, I have about 65 cymbals at the moment. Like, if I could collect anything, you collect snares, Dan. I and have so many, but I just love cymbals. They're almost heavenly for me. But yeah. I don't know. Do you go first? You've had some interesting experience with them over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, last week I was gonna bring up this independent cymbal smith. I know it's something we don't really think about. All these, I guess if you're in the age of Instagram and all that, we follow all these like custom snare drum builders and drum set companies, and you know, and there's some really fantastic stuff that I highly suggest people really look into that these big companies aren't doing. You know, these guys are breaking the mold and going to be the innovators for the next 50 years. And it's very exciting stuff. But we're also at that age where we can have access to cymbal smiths, people who make cymbals just like the big companies do, but are putting their own spin on it and their own twist on it. So I had the privilege to meet this guy. His name is Nicky Moon, NickyMoonCymbals.com, at the Delaware Drum Show, and got to know him a little bit. And a couple before all this outbreak stuff went on, I went down to his shop and visited with him, and learned a ton of stuff, like just even within the couple hours I was there. and gave him, probably 30 old cymbals that I just had packed away. I hadn't even reopened since the move from California. And I just said, here, man, if you can use these to do anything or whatever, just go nuts, have a blast with them. And like, he just keeps sending me pictures of taking old cymbals, rehammering them, relathing them, cutting them down, turning, I gave him a bunch of like old A customs that I never really just vibed with. And he just turned them into like hi-hats and made stacks. And I'm very excited to get everything back again once this all blows over.
Can't wait to hear them.
I learned just a ton of stuff about cymbals, and it just like sparked a conversation like before the podcast started about like where they come from, what makes them different, why we choose the cymbals that we do, and the thing about the drum set that gives playing personality, it's cymbals. Like you take cymbals away, like the drums are done. Like straight up,
absolutely.
They're super boring, they're stale. I don't care if you have the best snare drum in the world or the best kick drum, but you take a hi-hat away from that, or a crash or a ride, and it just instantly becomes so much space between them. So
flat.
Yeah, they're boring.
I think that a lot of beginner drummers, that'll be like the first really big like thing that they hit as far as the drums, like the way the drum set sounds. It's like, okay, they get their first drum set, it comes with the stock heads and the stock cymbals. It's easy to learn how to tune. Well, it's you can learn how to tune a drum, get the heads replaced, whatever, but to really invest in the cymbals, people to actually have any sort of complexity to them or any sort of life. I mean, I think that was definitely one of the first gigantic ruts I hit in like the way I wanted my drum set to sound, was figuring that out.
I didn't understand cymbals at first. Like, I just went and I bought the most expensive one at the music store because I was like, oh, whoa, cool. It was a splash cymbal. And I was like, oh man, this is probably really good. And I brought it home and I'm like, psh. I'm like, well,
underwhelmed.
I was like,
that
okay.
it? Why has it not made me tea yet?
I just didn't hear it yet. And there's these guys, people who know how to hammer the piece of metal and shape it to get the sound that we want to hear. If you went to him and said, I want a dark, trashy, complex, quick sustained thing, he'd be like, all right, I got you. And you could tell him the size, he'll get it by right down to the weight, like the gram. Like, that is like, who does that?
I love
so cool.
I love that sort of I love craftsmen. Anybody who's really honed their skill in making things is just so it's gold for me, and coming from an artist background, I mean, I'd said as well before the podcast, I made my own cymbal over 10 years ago now. It was a very long time ago, and I just took a load of old cymbals that I had, and at school we had a forge and we were able to melt them down. I created a basic sand cast, we poured it out, and then with the DIY area tech, he taught me how to lathe metal and helped me, and we lathed out this cymbal into a shape of a cymbal. I went from there and I tried hammering it with these just ball-ended hammers we had, or whatever was lying around the department at school, and I'd like to say I think it does sound good. It's not god tier, it's not amazing, and I would love to go back. And I want to make more cymbals because it's the precision. What I found when I was making it was I'd be hammering sort of like I put these hammered sections into it. I'd seen the Sabian Omni cymbals, if you know those ones with the Jojo Mayer sort of signature ones with the different lathed sections, and I thought, oh cool, why don't I try and sort of make these very permanent hammer indents to sort of section the cymbal off. to do that as well. And I remember sort of like hammering in, playing it, and being like, oh, that sounds great. Then adding just one more. There was a space, and I was like, oh, I need to add a hammer mark there for it to look right. Then playing it again, be like, oh, it sounds trash all of a sudden. And it's like you said, getting it down to the gram. It's like, wow, how could you do that? But it's essential, because I mean, I've heard cymbals that people have polished with metal polish, which actually, you know, just takes the thinnest layer off every time you polish. And the cymbal over time in recordings or just hearing it changes. But it's utterly fascinating, and that's why I collect them. I love them. And like you said, Flewp, trying to get that sound for your kit, be like, right, you've got this vision in your head, or for me, listening to someone and being like, I want a bit of that on my kit, just like the right stacker or the right ride cymbal. It's such an interesting journey musically for your sound when
absolutely. Yeah. And go ahead, Dan.
I was gonna say, like, a lot of people work with what you have, right, or what's available at the music store that you go to, or like Flewp said, what you get when you first start playing. And then there's this point where in your playing where you, at first you don't notice it, right? It's just a hi-hat, it's just a ride, or it's just a crash. And then you go, I don't like this. I don't like why does this sound this way? I don't like this. But you don't know what it is yet. And then, you know, you start looking into cymbals, and even once you do start looking at different stuff, you go, oh, okay, you know, there's terms like bright or dry or whatever. And we kind of make our own things, like, oh, that just sounds like really loud and sparkly maybe. But, you know, that always doesn't mean what it means. You know, sometimes you can get a dry cymbal, but it sounds, I have stuff here that, you know, it's dark and it's dry and it's real thin, but it's a higher pitch than like my explosion-y brilliant cymbals sound, especially on a recording, you know. So sometimes just what we think they are is misleading, you know. So also it is a neat journey to go on with cymbals. And I feel like guys like Nikki, they're making new stuff. They're doing stuff that the bigger companies probably have prototypes for, and the people that are smithing for them, you know, would probably love to just be like, yeah, I'll sell this, but they, you know, it gets prototyped or just never sees the light of day, where he can just say, no, I'm gonna try this, I'll make it and I'll sell it. Or if you can dream it up, he'll make it for you. And it's bonkers. It's really cool.
It's also interesting, and I know you've got your point, Flewp. I'll make this one quick, but it's, for example, what I thought you'd said, you know, if you get simply like, oh, that doesn't sound right, but you don't know what's right. Like when I first got my first pair of hi-hats, they were Zildjian ZBTs. And I'd gone in, I'd tried them in the music store.
Yeah.
I was like, that is the sound that I want. And I remember not even a couple of months later from playing them, I was like, these are awful. I don't want to ever play them again. They sound ridiculously bad. And it was because my ear had developed, you know, my musical ear. And that's the thing, when I go back and I play my cymbals, I haven't played an acoustic drum kit properly for a while. And in my new studio, when I'm finally able to move house, when all of this lockdown, etc. is over, the one thing I'm going to do first is get out the acoustic kit and just have a couple of days of playing it, because I miss my cymbals. But I am expecting for it to sound totally different in my mind, you know, from what it did. Obviously it'll sound the same, but the way I perceive it and my musical ear has gone so far since I last played an acoustic kit. I'm excited for that, you know, that almost rediscovery of it. But yeah,
that's awesome. I can't wait to hear it. Hopefully you make some recordings too, because I am in a totally different boat than you guys, where I own like 10 different cymbals, and I've had 2 sets of cymbals my entire life, and my favorite pair of hi-hats is actually ZBTs. So
really?
they are ZBTs, but I don't even know what you call the wear, like a patina or something. Like they have developed, they're like 20 years old, and they've developed over time to like all of like the weird, awkward brilliance that they kind of have off the factory has sort of like subdued down, and they kind of have turned into something that I really enjoy playing.
Nice.
And the reason, and I,
That's awesome.
I mean, it's just kind of like, I'll get to that point in a moment of what I've like, you know, as far as like how all cymbals are different. But my next set of cymbals that I got later on were A customs. And so if like my high end cymbals, I have, you know, a custom, a full set of A customs. So I have 2 pairs of hi-hats. I have ZBTs or A customs. And I don't know like a ton about cymbals, but I know that when I got the A customs, what I thought they would sound like versus what they actually sound like was very different, because A customs are so raw and so brilliant. When I was thinking, when I read brilliant on the website, I was like, yeah, they do look brilliant, but no, they sound like they.
Damn.
Yeah. It is like gnarly. Like in order to get the sound that you want out of those cymbals, you have to hit them hard enough. Otherwise, it sounds like it just doesn't sound correct. So because the cymbals are thick enough where you just have to commit to hitting it. So that is why I prefer my ZBTs over my A custom hi-hats, because my A custom hi-hats are so raw that unless I'm playing that style of music, they don't sound totally correct. Versus like the ZBTs, I can get a nicer sound out of them for the dynamics that I'm used to playing.
I'm gonna Photoshop Morpheus's glasses onto A customs and just be like, stop trying to hit me and hit me, you know, for you. Just
that was. Do you guys remember Z customs, the Zildjian Z customs? Those things too. They were so heavy. If you just tapped them, they sound like you were hitting like 10. You had to just like hit them as hard as you could for them to make any sense musically.
Yeah. And so when I listen to the A customs, like so I've had them both. I've had my ZBTs and A customs in a recording scenario, and my A customs without a doubt sound way better than my ZBTs. But to my ears in my basement is a different story. Just like, and I don't totally know how the frequencies work otherwise. But when I hit a cymbal versus like the way you can doctor it afterwards, you know, you can do a lot of things after the fact, but there's something to be said about, first of all, every cymbal is different, where I've played other ZBT hi-hats and they sound like trash, but for some reason those
you got the secret ones.
I got I don't know if, you know, totally unbiased, but my hi-hats sound way better than everybody else's. And you know, there's such a science that's so hard to understand about cymbals, especially to a new player, that it really takes a lot of trial and error. And you know, when I bought my cymbals, like it was all about like, you know, this was like 2005, where, you know, like the A customs were it. I don't remember vinyl being I don't remember vinyl or like dry cymbals or anything like that being like, I'm sure they existed, but they definitely weren't in the forefront of the market. And now it's changed so much. But you know, so now what I'm doing is my A customs, I'm thinking if they just get dusty enough and they get that crazy rawness, you know, they'll sort of develop a complex sound over time as long as I never wash them.
Cymbals, a fine wine, you know.
Yes.
Well, that was one of the things, like we talked earlier, but like playing a cymbal from him, like I got a ride cymbal that he made, and just when you play it, we were talking earlier how like I didn't feel as tired after like a couple hours of playing as if I played a different cymbal. It's just something about the balance of it, the way it responds, just like a properly tuned drum head. Like the stick's just going to naturally come back, whether it, you know, if it's unbalanced, it's going to be like a weird trampoline effect where you're fighting that rebound. So cymbals, you know, they might not like look pretty, or sometimes they're beautiful. And if they're unbalanced, like you just feel tired after playing, or you exactly have to work really hard to get the sound that you want. But I think a cymbal that's like hand hammered and really put a lot of care into by an individual, and it's rare to find that nowadays without spending like a crap ton of money. Even the companies that say they're hand hammered, they're not. There's only like a very select few that are legit hand hammered, where they're from beginning to end 100% built by hand, where there's no machining involved. They might hammer it a few and then they throw it on the machine and go, oh no, it's hand hammered. But an actually handmade cymbal from beginning to end is
Istanbul.
It's
The Istanbul cymbals. Now I know for a fact that you can go to their factory in Turkey, and it's for the UK. It's actually cheaper for me to fly out there when we're allowed to fly. Buy a set of cymbals from them and fly back and pay the import tax than it is to buy one of their cymbals in the UK, like a top head ride cymbal. But they hand hammer everything. Like none of their cymbals, they have lines of cymbals, I know, but their main export, the custom stuff, is made by one smith. You know, every one of those cymbals is signed and everyone is different, and they just the person who's creating it goes for the sound they feel that cymbal should have from the metal, the way the alloys mix, the way it sounds. And I love that. I one of the things I want to do is either go and see how cymbals are made in, like, I would love to work with Meinl, because I just adore their cymbals, but I'd love to go and see the process of them, how they make it, like you say, that sort of half hand hammering, half machine work, but also then go over to Istanbul and just watch a cymbal from start to finish from someone who is attached to that cymbal. You know, they are creating that sound, and it's such a fascinating and beautiful thing to me. Just and like you say, every cymbal is unique. My ZBTs sound like trash, like genuinely trash can lids sound better than my ZBTs. But I would love to hear your ZBTs.
I'm sure you would be underwhelmed now that I've talked them all up. The last thing I want to do is playing in front of you guys after you guys both own dozens and dozens and dozens of different sounding things. I'm gonna hit it, and you guys are gonna be like, "Yep, that's what I expected." I'm gonna be sitting over here like, "Yeah, it sounds great," and you're gonna be like, I'm glad you're happy. That's nice."
It's like when you're gonna be like, at one side of the room, and me and Dan be like,
yeah.
A fun thing to do, again, if you have like a microphone or you can record, take your cymbals and just put them in like a DAW or whatever, or wherever you can get like an EQ, and put an analyzer on and just hit it and see what EQ, what frequencies pop up. You'd be really surprised how similar they all are, right? You'd be like, oh, it's a crash. Yeah, that's where it pops up, or certain hi-hats. But certain alloys like B20 or B8 bronze, like the different mixtures have different frequency ranges. And I'm not gonna lie, Flewp, I've been in studio situations where a lot of money's on the line, and I show up with, my, expensive stuff or whatever, and the guy goes, "No, you're gonna use these." It's just the guy in the studio busts out like these B8 cymbals, Sabian, like a B8 ride, and I'm like, "No way, dude, no way!" And he's like, "Yeah, just try it. I'm telling you, your stuff is cool, but it's gonna oversaturate the mix with just all these unwanted frequencies that we don't want. We just want this little thing, and we can control it here." And I all these guys have used like the crappiest cymbals, maybe crappiest by like price point, or they get the brunt end of the joke. But you hit a crash on a recording, no one's gonna tell, because just the way it mixes in and blends. Or I show up with like 18-inch cymbals for crashes. I love them; they sound great. But on a recording, they just take over,
Wash.
And I've been in the studio where they's like, "Dude, get those out of here," and they bring out little 14-inch crashes, and I'm like, "No way, I'm not using those." It's like,
I have a 14-inch Stag a 14-inch Stag Crash, and I genuinely love it because I can ride on it and hit it to all heck, but it never goes above a certain washer volume. But interestingly enough, I've actually found a recording of my cymbal, which I did so long ago. So I recorded this with the AKG C1000, so the bog standard pencil mic. So yeah, let me show you this and let me know what you think. Bear in mind, I have not heard this cymbal either for going on 6 years. Like I've not heard a recording or played it. So for me, this is an experience as well.
I'm ready.
But yeah, okay. And I went for the different sections.
Yeah,
I like it.
Oh,
getting it.
oh boy.
I really liked it. I mean, I think as far as like your first cymbal that's like handmade and everything, I mean, it sounds correct to me. I don't,
Sounds like a cymbal at least. That bell, oh boy, that hurt inside. I don't remember it being that bad, but like I say...
So what are you guys listening for? Like, I'm curious, like, why did it sound bad to you guys?
It was very dull to me. The bell sounded very dull. The inner part of the cymbal, which was sort of like the higher, the second, for anybody just listening to this, the sort of like second section that was played, was very sharp. And then sort of like the main bow of the cymbal was what I preferred the most out of it still. Quite a short sustain, especially on the, actually just hitting it, just riding the cymbal sort of thing. It is meant to be a ride, because for me, the most important cymbal on the kit, aside from the hi-hats, for me is the ride cymbal. Like, I would quite happily, and I have done, play gigs with just hi-hat and ride, because it's so versatile. But yeah, it was very sort of dull. I not dark sounding, but I can't, muddy almost, with a very short sustain. And that just sort of made me go, about it. I didn't actually hit it that hard there. I know, because I was recording this in my bedroom at home and didn't want to annoy the parents. So I would love to see what it would be like if it was actually opened up on, really opened up on, like you said with your A Customs. But I liked it and I didn't like it. What did you think? Like,
Dan, you go first.
Yeah.
As far as cymbals go, like every cymbal is going to be fine for me. It's weird. That being said, it's how you play it, obviously, or the song that it's used for. It sounded good, dude. It sounded fine.
Yeah.
It's usable. We'll put it that way.
I mean, when I listen to it, I think of like,
I give that to a school band,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different contexts that could be applied in. It's dry, it has a short sustain. I mean, I've hit a quick
cymbal.
Yeah, I was actually really shocked at the very end, because you were starting to really wash it out, but it really it really settled itself real quick at the end of it. And I was not expecting that, especially from a ride cymbal, because I was trying to, as I was listening to it, I was trying to figure out, is this like a thick ride cymbal or a thin ride cymbal? And when you were hitting it, to me, for I don't listen to a whole lot of these types of things. It almost sounded to me like it was a thick cymbal because you had to, hit it a few times to get it going and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you really crashed it, that was not what I would expect from a thick cymbal. I would expect a thick cymbal to hold it sustained for longer, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the opposite effect. But I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, the more I think, I do remember it being quite a thick cymbal because we melted down a lot of cymbals. We just cast it out, and the lathing process, I didn't want to take too much off it because I was scared. I was like, I don't want to go through the cymbal lathing.
You can't put it back on.
Yeah, exactly. So I was very tentative with that. So I do remember it being quite thick, and I think the weight of it adds to that. Like you say, it's settling down. The sustain just not being there. It's probably from the weight of it. It was a good mil or two thick. When you actually looked at it, it was a thick cymbal.
Have any of you guys ever watched the time warp where they slow down drums, and you just see how cymbals move?
Yes.
And we hold them in our hands and we think they're just this big clunk, big thing.
They ripple around, don't they?
Man, just like a drum head. Even our sticks, when we hit, the sticks are going the things that we're doing when we play, it's unreal. So a cymbal, just not how it sounds, but how it moves and how it reacts when we hit it, and when we come back to hit it, where is it? Is it up here? Is it down here? Is it contorted? Is it there's so many things that go into it. For me, it sounded fine, man. You could use that on a gig. You'd make that work. A good drummer would be like, yeah, let's do this.
Some of the it's interesting you say about obviously the way you play it as well. Some of the ways I set up cymbals as well. I have a ride cymbal I cannot put a felt on top of and then a wing nut to hold it on. It has to just sit with a felt underneath it, because otherwise the cymbal just dies when you put a felt on. It's like, I don't know, it's like you're physically choking it constantly. But others are totally fine. It's very interesting, circumstances, and then the room. You could probably put that in your studio, Dan, and it would sound better than, obviously you've got better mics and would be able to hear probably the sound more accurately than what I recorded. Nearly 10 years ago now. So that would be interesting to see. But no, that was I just remembered, and I'd found from previously showing you the pictures of it. It popped into my head. I had the recording, but no, cymbals are wonderful things.
And this isn't something I mean, a beginner could maybe be, it might be cool to have a cymbal made by someone like Nikki, but the benefits are going to come from people who know what they're looking for and are very specific. It's like buying a custom suit, you can go into JCPenney or wherever and get a suit and walk across your graduation and be fine, but if you really have a tailored sound and you know what you're looking for, you're going to get the most out of talking with someone like Nikki or some of these cymbal smiths. They're all over the world, but there's very few of them. It's an art that it's you really got to know what you're doing. He showed me pictures, he's gone through thousands of cymbals that he wrecked just to figure out how to make a good hi-hat, or what he doesn't like about a hi-hat. So if you legit have an idea of the sound you want or the size or weight, he'll do it. There's even people out there making aluminum cymbals. I don't know if you guys ever tried one of those.
Yeah,
I've never.
Yeah, they're interesting. Yeah, there's a guy in Philly that he was at that drum show. He specializes in aluminum cymbals, and I almost got one, but I was like, I just couldn't.
When am I going to use this?
Yeah, I couldn't hear myself with it. You know, it's just like a piece of clothing. You know, the cymbals that's our personality behind the kit. You know, the sound that you're hitting. Man, we learn our touch on the drum set from cymbals. It's not from the snare drum or kick drum or toms.
You play the hi-hat more than anything else.
Yeah, we learn how to really talk through cymbals. So getting a cymbal that you hate to play, or you hit it and every time you hit it, you just want to like, ugh. You know, you need to get something that matches what's in your head and do research, find it. It's going to make you play better. It's going to make you more comfortable and just more musical in the end. But I'm really excited to just, I don't know, get to know Nikki more and see where he goes, because like right now he's swamped, like with everyone's home and they're playing and they're figuring out stuff and they're like, oh yeah, I'm finally gonna order that cymbal. So he is just like wrecked. He's like, my arms are dead. You know, because it's just him. It's just a guy, you know, that's doing a one-man shop. But check him out, nickymoon.com.
That's so cool.
Very good stuff. Yeah.
So I don't know if I just a quick fire question maybe, but the longer I feel like I play drums, and I noticed that all three of us have similar, I guess there's similar feels with our playing, but I almost find that all of my cymbals now are too thick, and the longer that I play drums, the more I enjoy thin cymbals and more. And I don't know. I know there's a point where it gets too thin, but have you guys noticed that, like, with the progression of your playing, like, I feel like they get more nuanced. Like, it just gets better the thinner it gets. But
I like my stick to sink into a cymbal, and with a thicker cymbal, it feels like you are playing on a piece of metal, but with sort of like some of the Byzance minor ones, like the ride you've got. I don't know how thick the one you have though is, Dan.
That's pretty thick. It's a really pingy ride. Like it's not something I use a lot, but it's heavy. It's a heavy cymbal.
Well, I got the chance to play Mike Johnston's kit after a clinic in the UK, and his ride cymbal, like the guy Joe, who's like the marketing guy for Meinl in the UK, was there, and I was chatting to him about their cymbals, and he was just like, look how thin this is, and he leant over and bent the cymbal, like just pushed down on either side, and it went into this U shape and then let go and it springs back up, and he was like, they are that thin. And then when playing it, the stick was, when I'm washing it, the stick was going into the cymbal, and I was feeling it while I was playing it. It was one of the most like pleasurable experiences of playing a cymbal I'd ever had, and it was wonderful. So I really get what you're saying about the thinner cymbals, most definitely.
Yeah, Flewp, like A customs they're performance cymbals. Like those are cymbals you'd want to get for like a live gig, because they're very high, they're very loud, and they cut through. Different as you play, like throughout the years, your taste does change, and what you hear and what the stuff you listen to changes, so then if you're listening to like what's the band, like super funky, like
Wolfpack.
Yeah, Wolfpack, right? They're very dry, very just like the cymbals are very just very, very subtle in the mix. If you're playing A customs and you're trying to play Wolfpack, you're gonna sound like, oh my gosh, I am a bull in a china shop, right? So certain cymbals definitely have their place, but then there are cymbals that you could use for anything, and that's kind of what I always like to do when I'm finding a cymbal is, can I play this on a rock thing? Can I play this on a jazz thing? Can I play this on a funk groove if I have to, depending on how I play it. Where some cymbals, you could play it soft, you could play it loud, and it's just not going to do what you want it to do just because it's good at one thing. So for me, picking a cymbal, I want to be able to say, I could use this all day long for anything. What do you want to play? instead of being like, oh God, you gotta play Wolfpack with this
exactly
crazy loud cymbal, you know. So stuff like Z Customs, I don't even think they make them anymore.
Good.
And A's, they're just oh God, they're so loud. And that's like one of the things that I bought earlier. Just I didn't know what it was. I just saw guys like Travis. I saw all these bands that I love. I'm like, oh, they got Z Customs. That's what I need. They're the best. And I get them, and no one wants to play with me because I'm the loudest guy in the whole town, and they're just like, "Oh, dude, you gotta deal with those cymbals." And I'm like, they sound like crap if I don't really hit them, but if you really hit them, they're so thick, they're just so loud. But finding out about all that stuff is really fun too. You know, finding that cymbal when you do play that ride that you love, or you're just like, "Oh, I need this."
That's a wonderful thing.
Can't live without it.
But yeah, so looking at the time, that is about an hour and a half. So
is it? I'm not looking at the time at all.
Yeah,
it's crazy how fast it flies.
Time flies when you're talking about drums. But yeah, I think that's
my kids are in the
place.
Jacuzzi. My wife just sent me a picture, so I'm a little worried right now.
Well, but I tell you, it's been a pleasure. Again, this has been absolutely awesome, and we'll definitely do it next week. But to anybody listening or watching the video on YouTube or wherever you found it, etc., on Spotify and things, hope you enjoyed this. We will be setting up a Twitter account, so look out for that. I'll be shouting out the tag next week, and we'll put everything so you can find it easily on there. And also, if you guys have any questions or suggestions of things that you'd like us to talk about, that'd be really, really cool to hear. So yeah, watch out for that. Of course, you can find us all three on our Twitch streams: Dan Drumstone, Flewp, Mr. Greggles, if you do watch anybody there. But yeah,
I wouldn't watch any of us. We're not that cool.
Definitely not.
But yeah, thank you so much, guys. And unless you have any sort of like end comments, then I think we'll wrap it up there and say bye.
Thank you to everyone listening, week. And yeah, this is a hoot. So
until next time.
Indeed. Bye everyone. Stay safe. Have a good one.